April 4th, 2024. 10:09 a.m. Oklahoma State Penitentiary, McAllister. Michael Dewayne Smith is strapped to a gurney in the execution chamber. His arms are extended, for lines snake into his veins. Behind one-way glass, the family of Janet Moore watches. They've waited 22 years for this moment. The warden asks Smith if he has any last words. Smith looks at the viewing room. His spiritual advisor, Reverend Jeff Hood, stands beside him, reading from the Bible. The room falls silent. Smith's response is 3 words, "Nah, I'm good." At 10:14 a.m., the first drug, midazolam, flows into his bloodstream. Smith's body shakes. He attempts to lift his head from the gurney. Then he relaxes. His breathing becomes labored, almost like snoring. 6 minutes later, at 10:20 a.m., Michael Dewayne Smith is pronounced dead. But how did a 19-year-old gang member end up here? What happened on that brutal day in 2002? Before we go back to that day, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover the darkest true crime stories from America's death row, cases that most channels won't touch. Every week, we bring you the real, unfiltered truth. Now, let's see what led to Michael Smith's execution. February 22nd, 2002. Oklahoma City, a city plagued by gang violence. Michael Dewayne Smith is 19 years old. He goes by the street name Hoover Killer. He's a member of the Oak Grove Posse, a subset of the Oklahoma City Crips gang. By this point in his young life, Smith has already fallen deep into the world of drugs and violence. His childhood was marked by tragedy. He lost his father at age 10 and grew up with what experts would later describe as borderline intellectual disability. But on this morning, Smith isn't thinking about his past. He's consumed by rage. 2 days earlier, news broke that 2 of his fellow gang members, Kenneth Peanut Kinchin and Dwayne Puggio Shirley, are about to stand trial. They're accused of attempting to rob a convenience store back in November 2000. That robbery went catastrophically wrong. The store owner, Han Van Ho, shot and killed one of the gang members, Taryn Teenock Armstrong, in self-defense. Armstrong was Smith's close friend. Smith has been using PCP heavily. The drug clouds his judgment, amplifies his paranoia, and fuels his desire for revenge. He believes someone snitched to the police about his whereabouts. He thinks he knows who. The target, Philip Zachary Jr. Smith arms himself with a handgun. He has a plan. Find Zachary. Eliminate the snitch. Send a message. 6:30 a.m. An apartment in East Oklahoma City. Janet Millermore, 41 years old, is getting dressed for work. She's employed at OU Medical Center in the hospital's insurance division. A dedicated worker. A loving mother. Known by her family as Niecy. Her son, Philip Zachary Jr., doesn't live with her, but Smith doesn't know that. Moore is alone in the apartment when she hears a loud crash. The front door bursts open. Michael Smith storms inside, looking for Zachary. Moore screams. Panic overtakes her. She doesn't understand what's happening. Why is this stranger in her home? Smith confronts her. Where is he? Where's your son? Moore's screaming won't stop. Smith, already high on PCP and paranoid, makes a split-second decision. He raises his gun and fires once into her left chest. Janet Moore collapses. She dies instantly. Smith realizes his mistake immediately. This wasn't Zachary. This was just a woman getting ready for work. According to later testimony, when Smith learned the identity of the woman he'd killed, he shrugged and said, "Oh well." Before leaving, Smith wipes down surfaces, trying to remove fingerprints. He's attempting to destroy evidence, but his mind is racing. The PCP, the adrenaline, the realization that he's just murdered an innocent woman. But Smith isn't done. His rage hasn't subsided. There's still someone else he believes disrespected his gang. An hour after killing Janet Moore, Michael Smith is driving through South Oklahoma City. His mind is fixated on another target. Back in November 2000, when Taron Armstrong was shot and killed during the botched robbery. The store owner gave an interview to the Oklahoma newspaper. In that interview, a store clerk made comments that Smith interpreted as disrespectful to Armstrong and the gang. Smith is convinced he knows which clerk said those words. He's certain the clerk works at the A&Z Food Mart on the south side. He's wrong. What Smith doesn't know is that the clerk who made those comments worked at a different store, the neighboring shop where the robbery actually took place. The person Smith is targeting has nothing to do with Armstrong's death. It's a case of mistaken identity. At approximately 7:30 a.m., Smith pulls up to the A&Z Food Mart. Inside, a young man is working the morning shift. His name is Sharath Pulluru, 22 years old, originally from India. He's a college student working part-time to support his education. He's filling in as a favor for a friend who needed the day off. Pulluru is the first member of his family to come to the United States. His family back home is proud. He has a promising future ahead of him. Michael Smith walks through the door. Inside the A&Z Food Mart, Sharath Pulluru is behind the counter. The store is quiet. It's early morning. Few customers. Michael Smith walks in. He's carrying a gun. He approaches the counter. What happens next is brutal. Smith opens fire. He shoots Pulluru 9 times. The bullets strike Pulluru's arms, legs, chest, and face. The young student doesn't have a chance to defend himself. He collapses behind the counter. But Smith isn't finished. He walks behind the counter and empties the cash register. Then he pulls out a bottle of lighter fluid. He douses Pulluru's body. He lights a match. Flames engulf Sharath Pulluru's body. Smith also starts fires around the store, attempting to destroy evidence. Smoke begins to fill the convenience store. Smith leaves the scene. He drives away, disposing of the clothing he wore during both murders. The next day, February 23rd, Smith tells 2 different people about the killings. One of them, horrified by what they've heard, contacts law enforcement. But at this point, police don't yet know about the murders at Moore's apartment or the A&Z Food Mart. They're about to arrest Smith for an entirely different crime. On February 24, 2002, just 2 days after the double murder, police take Michael Smith into custody. They're investigating the death of a man named Otis Payne, who was killed back in November 2001. Smith is the suspect. During questioning about Payne's death, Smith eventually confesses to that murder. But detectives sense there's more. The interrogation room at the Oklahoma City Police Department. February 2002. Detectives Janet McNutt and Teresa Sterling sit across from Michael Dewayne Smith. They've been questioning him about Otis Payne's murder. Smith has confessed, but the detectives have heard rumors. Whispers about 2 other murders. Recent ones. They press Smith about February 22nd. At first, Smith denies involvement in any other killings. But the pressure mounts. The evidence is mounting. One of Smith's associates has already talked. Finally, Smith breaks down. On a videotape that would later be played in court, Smith confesses to murdering both Janet Moore and Sharath Pulluru. He provides specific details. He describes how Moore panicked and screamed, and how he shot her because she wouldn't be quiet. He admits he wouldn't have killed her if she'd just calmed down. He confesses to shooting Pulluru to avenge Taron Armstrong. He believed Pulluru had insulted his dead friend in the newspaper. He didn't care that Pulluru was the wrong person. The confession is detailed. It's corroborated by evidence found at both crime scenes. It matches witness statements. It's recorded on video. But years later, Smith would claim he doesn't remember giving this confession. He'd say he was high on PCP during his arrest, that the drugs clouded his memory, that he was coerced by police. For now, though, the confession stands. Michael Smith is charged with first-degree murder. 2 counts. He's also charged with first-degree burglary, robbery with a firearm, and arson. Oklahoma County Courthouse. Michael Dewayne Smith stands trial for the murders of Janet Moore and Sharath Pulluru. The evidence against him is overwhelming. His videotaped confession, testimony from 2 people he told about the murders, forensic evidence from both crime scenes, ballistics matching his gun. The prosecution argues that Smith is a ruthless gang member who killed 2 innocent people in acts of misguided revenge. They paint a picture of a cold-blooded killer who showed no remorse. When he learned he'd killed the wrong woman, he shrugged it off. When he realized Pulluru wasn't the clerk who insulted his gang, he didn't care. The defense attempts to argue that Smith's heavy drug use and intellectual disability should be considered, that he was high on PCP, that his confession was unreliable. The jury doesn't buy it. Michael Dewayne Smith is found guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, twice. The jury must now decide his sentence, life in prison or death. They choose death. Smith is sentenced to die by lethal injection for the murders of Janet Moore and Sharath Pulluru. He's also sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of Otis Payne in a separate case. At 21 years old, Michael Smith is sent to death row at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. He becomes prisoner number 999621. Oklahoma State Penitentiary, Death Row, H Unit. Michael Smith's cell measures 6 feet by 9 feet. Barely enough room to turn around. 23 hours a day, he's locked inside. 1 hour for recreation in a small yard. No privacy. Constant surveillance. The harsh fluorescent lights never fully turn off. Death Row in Oklahoma holds 43 inmates. Smith is one of them. Some have been here for decades. Others are newer arrivals. They all share one thing in common, a date with the execution chamber. But for years, that date seems distant. After Smith's conviction, Oklahoma continues carrying out executions. Then, in 2014, something goes wrong. Clayton Lockett's execution. The lethal injection is botched. Lockett rides in apparent pain for 43 minutes before dying of a heart attack. A year later, in 2015, another execution uses the wrong drug. Charles Warner tells witnesses the drugs feel like acid and that his body is on fire. Oklahoma halts all executions. For nearly 7 years, death row inmates wait in limbo. No executions, but no commutations either. Just waiting. Smith files appeals. Claims of ineffective legal counsel. Arguments that his confession was coerced. Assertions that his intellectual disability should prevent his execution. Every appeal is denied. In 2007, in 2016, again in 2017. By March 2017, Smith has exhausted all his appeals. He's now eligible for execution. October 28, 2021. Oklahoma resumes executions after its 7-year hiatus. John Marion Grant is the first to die. Then the executions continue, one by one. Bigler Job Stouffer II, Donald Anthony Grant, Gilbert Postel, James Allen Coddington, Benjamin Cole. The list grows. Attorney General Gentner Drummond initially sets an aggressive schedule, one execution every 30 days. Oklahoma plans to execute more than 24 death row inmates over 3 years. But Drummond soon realizes the pace is unsustainable. The toll on prison staff, the psychological burden, the logistical challenges. In 2023, Drummond adjusts the schedule to one execution every 60 days. By November 2023, Oklahoma has executed 11 people since resuming capital punishment. Philip Hancock becomes the 11th on November 30th, 2023. In August 2022, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals releases death warrants for 25 condemned inmates. Michael Dewayne Smith is on that list. His execution date is initially scheduled for July 6, 2023, but legal challenges delay it. The date is rescheduled, April 4, 2024. Smith has been on death row for 21 years. He's now 41 years old. Janet Moore's family has waited 22 years for justice. Sharath Pulluru's family has endured the same agonizing wait. The execution is 4 months away. March 5, 2024. Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board. The clemency hearing for Michael Dewayne Smith. This is Smith's last chance to avoid execution. 5 board members will vote on whether to recommend clemency to Governor Kevin Stitt. If clemency is granted, Smith's death sentence would be commuted to life in prison without parole. Smith appears via video call from the prison. He addresses the board for 15 minutes. His voice cracks. Tears stream down his face. "I didn't commit these crimes," Smith says. "I didn't kill these people. I was high on drugs. I don't even remember getting arrested." He expresses his deepest apologies and deepest sorrows to the victims' families. But he maintains his innocence. He claims his confession was given while he was high on PCP and under psychological pressure. His attorney, Mark Henriksen, argues that executing Smith would not be adequate justice. Their relatives remain slain, and the only practical difference will be that the Smith family will join them in grief, Henriksen tells the board. And the totality of the sufferings will increase tenfold. But then members of Janet Moore's family speak. They ask the board to deny clemency. They've waited 22 years. They read a statement on behalf of Sharath Pulluru's family, who make the same request. Amy Ely, First Assistant Attorney General, argues that Smith remains a threat. Even in a highly restricted area of the prison, Smith has managed to create weapons, she says. The board votes 4-1 to deny clemency. Smith's fate is sealed. This is where everything changes for Michael Smith. But before we continue, if you want to see more deep dives into death row cases, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment. Do you think the death penalty is justice or murder? Now, let's see what happens in Smith's final days. April 2024. Michael Smith's legal team files emergency appeals. They argue that his confession was not sufficiently corroborated, that key elements don't match the physical evidence, that witnesses have recanted parts of their testimony, claiming they were coerced by police and the trial judge. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals rejects the appeals. They reference Smith's very detailed, highly corroborated confession, supported by crime scene evidence and additional confessions to other people. Smith's attorneys file a motion for post-conviction DNA testing. Denied. The court rules that additional testing wouldn't change the validity of his conviction. On April 3rd, Smith's family petitions Governor Kevin Stitt to intervene. They present what they claim is new evidence showing witness coercion. The governor does not respond. Hours before the execution, a crisis erupts. Smith's attorney, Mark Henriksen, allegedly tells Smith's family he won't file any further appeals. Smith's family rushes to Henriksen's office, demanding action. According to activists present, the attorneys eventually call security to remove the family members. The U.S. Supreme Court is Smith's final hope. On the morning of April 4th, the Supreme Court denies a stay of execution. April 3rd, 2024. Night. Death row, Oklahoma State Penitentiary. Michael Dewayne Smith knows this is his last night alive. In less than 12 hours, he'll be strapped to a gurney and injected with a lethal combination of drugs. He speaks to HuffPost in an interview. "I'm staying in good spirits, for the most part," he says. "I'm good, given the circumstances." He maintains his innocence. "I have no memory of my actual arrest or my interrogation," Smith tells the reporter. He claims inconsistencies in his confession were never adequately addressed. Prison protocol for executions is precise. Smith is moved to a holding cell near the execution chamber. He's under constant observation. Guards document his every movement. Smith is offered a last meal, a tradition in many states where condemned inmates can request virtually any food. Some order elaborate spreads: steak and lobster, fried chicken, ice cream, It's a small gesture of humanity before the state takes their life. Michael Dewayne Smith declines. He doesn't request a last meal. Instead, he eats some remaining food from the prison canteen. Nothing special. Nothing memorable. He meets with Reverend Jeff Hood, his spiritual advisor. They pray together. Hood reads passages from the Bible. Smith asks Hood to be present during the execution. The night stretches on. Morning approaches. April 4th, 2024. 9 a.m. Outside the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. A small crowd gathers near the front gate. Members of the Oklahoma Coalition to abolish the death penalty hold a prayer vigil. They hold signs. Stop state killing. Mercy, not execution. They pray for Janet Moore, Sharath Pulluru, and Michael Smith. They pray for the corrections officers who must carry out the execution. Reverend Don Heath, who chairs the coalition, releases a statement. Michael Smith was a troubled and vulnerable young man with intellectual disabilities, Heath says. He was ill-served by advisors who encouraged him to proclaim his innocence instead of accepting responsibility for his crimes. That cost him any chance for clemency. He needed mercy and forgiveness and got none. Inside the prison, Michael Smith is prepared for execution. He's wearing prison whites. His head is shaved. He's given a medical examination to locate suitable veins for the 4 lines. At the same time, witnesses arrive. Media representatives. Janet Moore's son, Philip Zachary Jr., and her niece, Morgan Miller Perkins. Attorney General Gentner Drummond. Prison officials. A total of about 20 people will witness the execution from behind one-way glass. Smith cannot see them, but they can see him. 10 a.m. approaches. The execution team prepares the death chamber. 10:05 a.m. The execution chamber at Oklahoma State Penitentiary. The room is small, clinical. The walls are painted pale green. In the center sits a padded gurney. Leather straps. 2 4-poles on either side. Behind one-way glass, the witness room. Michael Dewayne Smith is escorted into the chamber. Corrections officers guide him to the gurney. He's calm, resigned. His face shows little emotion. He lies down on the gurney. Officers strap his chest, arms, and legs. His arms are extended perpendicular to his body, forming a T-shape. This position allows medical personnel to access the veins in both arms. A medical team inserts 4 lines into his arms. 1 line in his left arm, 1 in his right. These lines are connected to tubes that run through a hole in the wall into an adjacent room where the execution team waits. The team cannot see Smith. They can only follow the warden's commands via radio. Reverend Jeff Hood stands beside Smith as requested. Hood speaks softly to Smith. He reads from the Bible. Smith's microphone is turned off, so witnesses cannot hear their conversation. But later, corrections officials will report that Smith was expressing love to his family. At 10:09 a.m., the execution process officially begins. Warden Jason Sparks enters the chamber. He asks Michael Dewayne Smith if he has any final words. Smith looks toward the viewing room. His expression is neutral. "Nah, I'm good," he says. Oklahoma uses a 3-drug lethal injection protocol. Each drug serves a specific purpose. First, midazolam, a sedative designed to render the inmate unconscious. It's supposed to ensure the inmate doesn't feel pain from the subsequent drugs. This drug has been controversial. Critics argue it doesn't always work as intended. In some executions, inmates have appeared conscious and in pain. Second, vecuronium bromide, a paralytic agent. It stops all voluntary muscle movement, including breathing. The inmate cannot move, cannot speak, cannot breathe. If the inmate is still conscious, they would suffocate while unable to move or cry out. Third, potassium chloride. This drug stops the heart. It causes cardiac arrest. If injected into a conscious person, it would feel like fire burning through the veins. excruciating pain. But if the midazolam worked correctly, the inmate should be unconscious and feel nothing. At 10:09 a.m., the warden signals to the execution team. They begin administering the midazolam. The drug flows through the foreline into Michael Smith's left arm. Smith's body reacts immediately. He shakes. His muscles tense. He attempts to lift his head from the gurney, straining against the straps. Behind the glass, witnesses lean forward. Is something wrong? Then, suddenly, Smith relaxes. His head falls back onto the gurney. His breathing changes. It becomes deep, labored, almost like snoring. Some breaths sound like gasps. At 10:14 a.m., 5 minutes after the injection began, the warden declares Michael Smith unconscious. The second and third drugs are administered. 10:14 a.m. Michael Smith's breathing has become irregular. The snoring sounds continue. Oklahoma Department of Corrections Director Stephen Harp will later explain that Smith appeared to have sleep apnea, which may have contributed to the unusual breathing noises. Vecuronium bromide enters Smith's bloodstream. Within moments, his breathing slows, then stops. His chest no longer rises and falls. The paralytic has done its job. Finally, potassium chloride. Smith's heart, still beating weakly, receives the fatal dose. Cardiac arrest begins. Reverend Jeff Hood watches from beside the gurney. Later, he'll tell reporters that Smith was tearful in the minutes before and during the execution. As the drugs took effect, Hood noticed a single tear roll from Smith's right eye. Even after Smith appeared dead, the tear fell. In the witness room, Philip Zachary Jr. and Morgan Miller Perkins watch their family member's killer die. They see Smith shake when the first drug is administered. They see him struggle to lift his head. They see him fall still. For 22 years, they've waited for this moment. Since that morning in February 2002, when Janet Moore was murdered in her own home. At 10:20 a.m., a physician enters the execution chamber. He checks for vital signs, listens for a heartbeat, checks for breathing, examines Smith's pupils. The physician steps back and nods to the warden. At 10:20 a.m., Michael Dewayne Smith is officially pronounced dead. Minutes after the execution, Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond addresses the media. He stands between Philip Zachary Jr. and Morgan Miller Perkins outside the prison. Drummond reads a statement on behalf of Janet Moore's family. Honor and glory to the Most High, as this is the day the Lord has made. Thank you to the Attorney General and staff in representation of the state of Oklahoma for the continued support to seek justice for the beloved Janet Denise Nisi Millermore. We would like to share our appreciation to the staff who have gone above and beyond for our family. It does not go unnoticed or in vain, as we were constantly reminded this is justice for a loss that has caused a ripple for generations to come. Today and always, we honor the mother, the sister, the aunt, the cousin, and the angel on earth and in heaven. The memory of her life, her work, and her deeds will continue to live on. Justice has been served. Drummond then reads a statement from Sharath Pulluru's family. His brother Harish, a doctor in Nebraska, writes, Sharath was the life of our family. We are a very close family, and his sudden death in such a violent manner has affected our family's lives every day since. He will forever live in our hearts. We are thankful justice was served today. For these families, the wait is over, but the pain remains. Attorney General Gentner Drummond delivers his own statement. His words are measured, solemn. I pray that today brings some measure of peace for the families of Janet Millermore and Sharath Pulluru. It has been a long and difficult 22 years for their loved ones, and my heart aches over the agony they have endured. He continues, I want the people of Oklahoma to know that the victims of Michael Smith were good and decent people who did not deserve their fate. Janet, a loving mother and dedicated hospital staffer, was a rock for her family. She was always willing to lend a hand to anyone in need, an ear to anyone who needed to feel heard, and a kind word to anyone who is struggling. Drummond speaks of Sharath Pulluru. Sharath, a bright young man with a generous spirit, was the first in his family to come to the United States to pursue an education. He was fun to be around, was an inspiration to his family, and had a promising future. Janet and Sharath were murdered simply because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was all. I am grateful that justice has been served. Oklahoma Department of Corrections Director Stephen Harp also releases a statement. Today's event and the circumstances that led to it have affected many people, especially the family and friends of victims Janet Moore and Sharath Pulluru. Outside the governor's mansion in Oklahoma City, protesters have been demonstrating since early morning. The Oklahoma Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty demands that Governor Kevin Stitt halt the execution. Tracy Carmack, who has attended more than a dozen executions to protest, speaks to reporters. What if a family member of yours was wrongly convicted and tried and executed, and then they find out later that they were innocent? You can never take that back. If these people had some underlying cause, keep them incarcerated. Keep them incarcerated for life, but treat them. Help them. Don't just murder them. Dalvin Cooks holds a protest sign for the first time in his life. I'm tired of this, he says. I think the system is not in our favor of African Americans at all. I'm tired of looking at TV and everybody got a date at 10 a.m. to die. Reverend Jeff Hood, Smith's spiritual advisor who witnessed the execution, emerges from the prison visibly shaken. What happened today was unnecessary, Hood tells reporters. Oklahoma is going to be no different this afternoon than it was this morning. No safer. The only thing that it's going to be is less ethical. The debate over capital punishment continues. Michael Smith is the 12th person Oklahoma has executed since 2021. He's the first execution in Oklahoma in 2024. Michael Dewayne Smith's execution raises questions that persist long after his death. Was justice served? Janet Moore's family believes so. They waited 22 years. Sharath Pulluru's family feels the same way. For them, Smith's execution brings closure, or at least as much closure as possible after such brutal losses. But others question whether executing a man with documented intellectual disabilities and a history of severe drug abuse truly serves justice. Smith was 10 years old when his father died. He had borderline intellectual disability, worsened by years of PCP abuse. He was 19, barely an adult, when he committed these horrific crimes. Does that excuse what he did? No. Janet Moore and Sharath Pulluru were innocent. They were murdered simply because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Moore was getting ready for work. Pulluru was covering shift for a friend. But should Smith have been executed? Or should he have spent the rest of his life in prison, with the possibility of rehabilitation and treatment? These questions have no easy answers. What we know for certain, on April 4th, 2024, at 10:20 a.m., Michael Dewayne Smith became the first person executed in Oklahoma in 2024. His final words were 3 simple words: "Nah, I'm good." 2 families can finally say goodbye to the loved ones they lost 22 years ago. Another family now grieves the loss of Michael Smith, and the death penalty in America continues. That's the brutal reality of Michael Dewayne Smith's execution. If this story impacted you, hit that subscribe button because we cover death row cases like this every week. Stories that are complex, controversial, and real. Drop a comment. Do you think Smith's intellectual disability and drug use should have spared him from execution? Check out our other videos on Oklahoma's death row, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.